The path of transcendence opened by salvaging a damaged celestial globe from the antique market. In the Detective de Renjie, he strategized and ascended to the rank of the 9-5 sovereigns, ruling the world. In the Lu Xiaofeng series, battle against various heroes and fully understand the hidden meaning, gather the 4 great divine skills in the unparalleled double pride, and refine an invincible body, cultivating innate energy in the twin dragons of the Tang Dynasty, achieving the breaking of the void tentative dungeons. Detective de Renjie, Lu Xiaofeng series, unprecedented twin princes, Tang Dynasty twin dragons, Shuizhong, immortal sword, thunderbolt, golden light, Tian Shu Chitan, etc. Keywords of the novel. Zhu Tian starts from Detective de Renjie without pop-ups. Zhu Tian starts from Detective de Renjie to download the complete TXT collection, and Zhu Tian starts from Detective de Renjie to read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Xiake Xing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Xiake Xing. Wuzhou, the first year of Dazue carriage, protected by the Qian guard, slowly drove along the official road to the divine capital of Luoyang. The identity of the people in the carriage must be extraordinary, as they can be escorted by the Qian guards of the emperor's relatives. Inside the carriage, a kind-looking old man was closing his eyes in contemplation, and the jolt of the carriage did not disturb his thoughts at all. This person is the famous prime minister of the Youzhou dynasty, de Renjie. But compared to the position of prime minister, which is below 1 person and above 10,000 people, he also has a more legendary identity. A detective. It is rumored that during his tenure as the magistrate of Dali Temple, he handled a large backlog of cases within a year, involving up to 17,000 people. Not long ago, he was framed by a cruel official named Li Junchen and demoted to Pengze County by Empress Wuziqian. He was reinstated due to a decree and embarked on his journey back to the capital of gods. In the past decade, Youzhou and the Turks have been engaged in continuous warfare, with heavy casualties on both sides and a desire for peace. Therefore, the main peace faction within the Turks, Jili Khan and his brother Shibi Khan, decided to send an envoy to Youzhou to discuss peace talks. Unexpectedly, the mission was robbed and killed by criminals on the way, and except for the missing captain of the guard, Li Yuanfang, the entire army was destroyed. Not only that, after robbing and killing the mission, the criminals disguised themselves as the mission and came to Youzhou, killing Li Qingxia, the princess of Yang, who was sent to the Turks for marriage. In the Grand Court of Heaven, Wuziqian was played with by a group of criminals in the palm of her hand, and her face was instantly swept away. In order to thoroughly investigate this case and identify the true culprit behind the scenes, Empress Wuziqian decided to reinstate de Renjie, who had been demoted. At this moment, de Renjie is pondering the clues to the mission's interception case. As he was closing his eyes in contemplation, he suddenly heard a burst of free and bold singing. Zhao Kuman's beard is adorned with tassels, Wu Go is clear in frost and snow. The silver saddle shines on the white horse, rustling like a shooting star. Kill 1 person in 10 steps, leaving no trace for 1,000 miles. After the incident, brush off your clothes and hide deep in your name. Leisurely passing by Xinling to drink, taking off his sword and kneeling horizontally in front of him. Roast Zhu Hai and hold a cup to persuade Ho Ying. 3 cups of wine make a promise, but the 5 sacred mountains are light. After experiencing iron ear heat, one's energy will grow. Saving Zhao with a golden hammer shocked Han Dan first. 2 brave warriors of the Qianqiu period, renowned in the city of Daliang. To die with the fragrance of chivalry, not to be ashamed of the world's heroes. Who can write your excellency, white-headed Tai Xian Jing? Good poetry. Good spirit. De Renjie subconsciously exclaimed. The poetry is catchy, the choice of words is grand, and the use of allusions is precise, vividly describing the image of a chivalrous and ambitious hero who promises to be 1,000 gold coins. However, de Renjie could never have imagined that the author of this poem, whom he praised endlessly, would not be born until a year later. And the person who recites this poem naturally does not belong to this era. This person's name is Renjie, who was originally a college student over 1,000 years later. By chance, he was reincarnated into this world. At this moment, he wielded his sword and galloped his horse, reciting this poem, The Hero's Journey, and unexpectedly stopped in front of the Imperial Guard. Up! Who are you? How dare you intercept the Imperial Guard? The captain of the guard drew a long sword from his waist and shouted at Renjie's anger. This road is an official road, although ordinary people can also walk. If they encounter a tolerance, they must consciously give way, otherwise it will be a great sin of disrespect. The person in front of me not only refused to give way, but also stopped me on horseback, which is truly despicable. As the Imperial Guard, is there an Imperial Guard inside the carriage? Renjie ignored Captain Wei's anger and asked calmly. At this moment, the curtain of the carriage was lifted by an old hand, and a kind-looking old man poked his head out and asked, "What's going on? Why did the carriage stop?" The guard next to him immediately explained, "Lord D, someone is blocking the progress of the guard." Later, he quickly said, "Sir, please wait a moment. I will bring him to justice." Ah! It's impossible to make mistakes. Seeing that the guard was about to use swords, Renjie immediately stopped him. He knew that if there was no way out, the common people would never dare to stop the imperial envoy from driving. Even bandits who rob the road will not be foolish enough to commit crimes on the official road. Such actions are mostly aimed at seeking justice. Renjie turned his head to look at the person who was blocking the car. He saw that he was only in his 20s, dressed in black, with a delicate face, wielding a sword at his waist, and sitting on a silver saddle white horse, which perfectly matched the line in the poem, "Silver saddle shines on white horse." What a spirited young ranger! Renjie praised in his heart. The person who came to recite poetry just now is this one. Thinking of this, Renjie appreciated the visitors a bit more. Those who can write such poetry and prose must be those who have grooves in their hearts and are righteous and chivalrous. "Young man, why are you blocking the Imperial Guard?" Renjie asked curiously. Renjie looked at the legendary detective, the famous Renjie, and suddenly felt a sense of seclusion in his heart. "Are you the Imperial envoy?" Renjie withdrew his mind and asked knowingly. He. Renjie smiled at the words and replied, "Not bad, I'm just an Imperial envoy. If you have any grievances, feel free to speak up." He still thought that the person in front of him was wronged, that's why he stopped him. "As an Imperial envoy, I have a petition here. I wonder if you dare to take it." Renjie rudely provoked. Although he knew that with Renjie's character, he would definitely take on this paper. But currently he is playing a ranger and doesn't know Renjie, so he naturally needs to act arrogant. When Renjie heard someone ask him, dare not answer, he guessed most of it in his heart. The person who is being sued on this paper is definitely either rich or noble, and ordinary officials cannot avoid it. But is Renjie an ordinary person? Why don't you show me the paper first and give me a response after I have read it? Renjie replied. He did not immediately agree, but prepared to take a look at the petition before making a decision. Okay. Renjie simply replied straightforwardly. Then he took out the paper from his pocket and threw it to Renjie's guard. The guard took the paper and confirmed that there were no issues before handing it to Renjie. Renjie unfolded the paper and read it carefully. Unexpectedly, he became more and more shocked and angry as he looked, and his originally kind face suddenly became solemn and dignified. Although he had already guessed that the person being sued in this lawsuit was either wealthy or wealthy, Renjie still felt shocked when he saw the content. Yuanfang colluded with officials in Yangzhou to embezzle the wages and silver of the canal workers, causing them to launch a riot and almost triggering a rebellion. Not only that, the petition also clearly records the Yuanqi raising assassins in the martial arts world, intercepting and slaughtering people who attempted to appeal. Renjie hates corrupt officials the most in his life, and he sees those who cannot be officials oppressing the good people the most. This paper completely aroused the anger in his heart. If these officials were to stand in front of him at this moment, he would definitely punish these corrupt officials who are lying dead and eating nothing. More importantly, it records the incident of King Ingwang Yuanqi raising assassins in the martial arts world to slaughter the people. A prince who privately raises thousands of fugitive assassins is a crime of rebellion, capable of annihilating the 9 tribes. If it were usual, Renjie would make this matter go straight to Tianting. But now, he cannot do so. Because compared to the internal affairs of the Youzhou dynasty, the diplomatic mission case involving the diplomatic relations between Youzhou and the Turks is more urgent. This is a major case that concerns the lives and deaths of hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians in both countries, and cannot be delayed. Therefore, even if there was a raging anger in his heart, Renjie could only suppress it and look up at Xing, saying, "You lawyer, I have taken over." "Really?" Xing immediately said. "A gentleman's words are hard to recall." Renjie replied. "Okay." Xing praised upon hearing this, "You are a good official. I have traveled to more than 10 provinces and counties, and you are the only one who dares to take this petition." He. Renjie smiled again and said, "But I have something important to attend to right now and can't spare time. I need to wait until I finish what I have at hand before I can accept your case." Xing frowned upon hearing this, as if he didn't believe his words. Renjie also knew that there was a suspicion of passing the buck when he said, "If you don't believe it, why don't you stay by my side for now?" After pondering for a long time, Xing finally replied, "Okay. I'll wait for you to finish the task first." "Okay. I'm about to go to Jiangzhong County ahead. Since that's the case, let's go together." After Renjie finished speaking, he put down the curtain. Xing also consciously made way and let the Imperial Guard move forward, while he silently followed behind the team. The first step plan has finally been achieved. Xing silently thought to herself. "Young man, I don't know your name yet, I don't know." Renjie inside the sedan suddenly asked. "I am deeply worried about it." Xing drove his horse while answering. "Yuji, according to your accent, are you from Yangzhou?" Renjie said again. "Not bad." Xing told a lie. He is not actually from Yangzhou, and his accent is deliberately imitated. "So, the things recorded in this paper are what you saw with your own eyes?" Renjie continued to ask. "That's true," Xing nodded and said. "This is not a lie, he has indeed been to Yangzhou and met those forced laborers who couldn't survive." "I remember you mentioned it earlier," Renjie said. "You said you went to more than 10 states and counties, but couldn't even send out this paper." "That's right," Xing replied, "I've been to all the counties near Yangzhou, and no yamen dares to take this petition." Immediately, he added, "To be honest, I have already killed dozens of assassins under Yuanqi's command along the way, which is how I got rid of their tracking and pursuit." "I see." Renjie sighed, "This matter involves a lot, no wonder those local officials dare not easily intervene. After all, Yuanqi was the Ingwang personally conferred by the emperor. Who would dare to provoke him by ordinary local officials?" "I haven't consulted you yet, sir," Xing pretended not to know and asked. Renjie chuckled and said, "My surname is my name is Renjie." Upon hearing this, Xing was immediately surprised and said, "Are you Duke D?" "Not bad," Renjie said with a smile. "No wonder you dare to take this petition." Xing said with some excitement, "People say that Duke D is a pure and upright official. Now it seems that rumors are not false." This is just people's admiration." Renjie humbly said, "As an official, as long as the upper body has the heavenly heart and the lower body loves the people, it is worthy of the brocade robe on his body. Although that is the case, there are many officials in the world who are like sturgeons crossing the river. How many people can win the love of the people and even establish ancestral halls for them? What Duke Di said is quite true. Xing immediately said, since we are destined to meet today, Duke Di has a mission. I will go through fire and water, and I will not refuse. Ha ha ha, Renjie laughed at the words and said, then you're in time. There is a big matter that requires manpower right now, and if you are willing to help, it would be great. Di Gong, just give orders. Xing said without hesitation. Don't worry, Renjie said mysteriously, I will tell you when the time comes. Xing claimed to be. It seems that Renjie still doesn't trust me. Xing thought to himself. It's not surprising that no one would easily believe a ranger who has been killed halfway. Especially at this sensitive moment. The embassy case has just occurred, and all the mysteries have not been solved yet. How could Renjie be completely unprepared for a newly acquainted martial arts ranger? He kept himself by his side, and besides that piece of paper, he mostly had the intention of examining himself. If one really has ulterior motives, an enemy under his surveillance is much easier to deal with than an enemy hidden in the dark. However, time will prove everything. Before Xing plan reached its final stage, his interests were highly aligned with those of Renjie. At least for now, he will definitely do his best to help Renjie solve the mystery case of the mission. Because only in this way can Renjie take the time to handle the Yangzhou case and help him deal with Fu Wing and Wang Yuanqi. New book seeking support, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Do Yuanfang talks about the snake spirit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Do Yuanfang talks about the snake spirit night. Jiangjing County Post House. Xing was arranged by Renjie to rest in room B of Tianzi. And Renjie's room is Tianzijia, which is Xing next door. It was already late at night, but Xing had no intention of resting. Because he knew that tonight, Li Yuanfang would sneak into the inn to meet with Renjie. This is their first encounter and the beginning of a nightmare for all future conspirators. If those conspirators knew that it was Yu Feng, a subordinate of Jean Mulan, who brought Li Yuanfang and Renjie together, they would surely wish to break this guy apart. In room A, Renjie is contemplating the case and listing everything that happened today on paper one by one. The real mission is killed, if the mission enters Beijing, the earthen kiln catches fire, the princess is assassinated, and the missing Li Yuanfang is a mysterious ranger judging from the ink. The last one was just added. Renjie looked at the unrelated events listed on the paper, pondering possible associations in his mind. Later, he picked up his pen and wrote to the side. Li Yuanfang. Kill the Turkic delegation. Escape from the scene. Suddenly appear in Lingzhou. Kill the constable. Monster. Strange. Strange. Just as Renjie was lost in thought, the candlelight in the room suddenly shook. Renjie keenly sensed something unusual. However, before he could react, the candles suddenly went out and the entire room fell into darkness. Faced with such a strange situation, Renjie remained calm and composed, wanting to see what kind of tricks this mysterious visitor was trying to play. At this moment, the door suddenly opened wide. Jia, a black shadow rushed into the room in an instant. In the darkness, Renjie only heard a clang sound, followed by the sound of ding ding ding, swords clashing. After about 10 breaths, everything returned to tranquility once again. Pup, the candle was lit, and the room regained its brightness. Renjie finally understood the situation at this moment. Xing held a long sword, with the blade pressed against the chest of a mysterious man holding the sword. Good swordsmanship. The mysterious person looked at Xing and exclaimed in amazement. Your swordsmanship is not bad either. Xing replied. Renjie saw the situation and asked Xing, Youzhou, what's going on? Gong, Xing replied, I heard some noise next door just now, so I came to check. This person's swordsmanship and lightness skills are all top-notch, and he is not an ordinary person. Renjie nodded and looked at the mysterious person who had been raiding the inn at night, asking, "Can you tell me who you are?" The mysterious person smiled and said, "It is said that Duke D's reasoning is divine. Can't you really guess my identity?" Renjie smiled and said, "I had a premonition that there would be gains tonight, but I didn't expect it to come true so soon." "So, Gong really knows my identity now," the mysterious person exclaimed. "Li Yuanfang, the captain of the Turkic envoy's guard, the first wanted criminal of the court." Renjie blurted out the identity of the mysterious person. The mysterious person was stunned and exclaimed, "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it." "Not bad, I am Li Yuanfang." Yuanfang did not forget his current identity and performed perfectly with a bewildered expression. "Worry about it, let him go," Renjie suddenly said. Yuanfang looked at Renjie and withdrew the long sword that was pressed against Li Yuanfang's chest. To be honest, if it weren't for Li Yuanfang experiencing hundreds of battles of various sizes over the past few months, suffering serious injuries, and traveling day and night from Lingzhou to arrive here, he would have been exhausted. It would have been difficult for him to subdue the opponent in such a short time. "Once your injury is healed, let's fight again," Yuanfang said. "Okay." Li Yuanfang also readily agreed. He could see that the person in front of him was not inferior in martial arts, and even if he was not injured, it was difficult to predict the outcome. "Tell me, what do you want to do when you come here late at night to see me?" Renjie looked at Li Yuanfang and said, "Kill the mission, slaughter the captors. In this situation, how dare you come to see me? Your courage surprised me. Do adults really think I did it?" Li Yuanfang said with a bitter smile. "What I think is not important, what matters is the facts," said Renjie. "The fact is, it wasn't me who killed the mission in the Lingzhou constable," said Li Yuanfang. "It seems that you're going to tell me a very long story," said Renjie. Li Yuanfang nodded. "Sit down and talk," Renjie gestured. After the two of them sat down, Li Yuanfang told her story truthfully. Yuanfang silently closed the door to prevent anyone from noticing the situation inside. "Are you saying that the killer left a handkerchief behind?" After listening to the story, Renjie suddenly asked. "Not bad," Li Yuanfang nodded and said, "Your Excellency is really meticulous. Use the details in my words to test whether what I said is true or false." Renjie shook his head and smiled, "This handkerchief is currently the only evidence, I just want to see it." Upon hearing this, Li Yuanfang immediately took out the handkerchief left by the pit viper from her arms and handed it to Renjie. Renjie unfolded the handkerchief and found a small pit viper embroidered on it. He looked at the handkerchief and fell into contemplation. Yuanfang suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Snake spirit." Renjie, who was lost in thought, suddenly woke up and asked, "Worry, what are you talking about? Snake spirit? What is that?" Upon seeing this, Yuanfang replied truthfully, "I also heard the name Snake Spirit by chance. I only know that it is a huge organization with many members, all of whom are fugitives. Now that I see the snake-shaped pattern on this handkerchief, I can't help but think of this name. Is the Snake Spirit you're talking about a martial arts organization?" Renjie continued to ask. He had never heard of such an organization before, and from its name, it should not be an institution of the court. Yuanfang shook his head and replied, "It shouldn't be a simple Jianghu organization. They also rarely appear in the martial arts world. Few people in the martial arts world are aware of the existence of the Snake Spirit. I also accidentally heard their names while traveling in Youzhou. Now is not the time to deal with the Snake Spirit. We cannot let Renjie start targeting the Snake Spirit too early. Yuanfang only wants to leave a button for now for future actions, and has no intention of revealing too much." Renjie listened to Yuanfang's words and fell into contemplation again. Mission intercepted, mysterious assassin viper, mysterious organization Snake Spirit. What is hidden behind all of this? Renjie struggled with no results, then pulled his thoughts back to his eyes and asked Li Yuanfang, "Why did that mysterious killer viper let you go?" "I couldn't understand it at first," Li Yuanfang replied with a bitter smile, "but now I understand. They are trying to blame me for killing the mission." Sure enough, just after I narrowly escaped death, the court issued a arrest warrant, listing me as the culprit in the mission case. And no matter where I hide, I will always be found by people. Until now, my humble position has gone through dozens of battles, big and small. Helplessly, my humble duty came to see you. It's not that you're coming to see me, it's that they want you to come and see me. Renjie immediately exposed Li Yuanfang's lie. Upon hearing this, Li Yuanfang was startled and instinctively swallowed saliva. "I don't understand adults' meaning in my humble position." Li Yuanfang tried to argue insincerely. "I don't understand. I ask you, how did you find out where I landed? These are all secrets of the court. As a person in distress, how can you know?" Renjie's gaze was electric, staring straight at Li Yuanfang. Me, Li Yuanfang looked at Renjie's gaze, feeling increasingly anxious and unsure of how to explain. "Tell me, who guided you to see me?" Renjie asked again. Li Yuanfang had no choice but to reveal the mysterious person who guided him to find Renjie in Lingzhou. "Do you use a knife?" After listening to Li Yuanfang's explanation, Renjie suddenly asked. Li Yuanfang was taken aback at the words and nodded honestly, "Yes." "Let me take a look," Renjie said again. Li Yuanfang handed his chain knife to Renjie. Renjie carefully examined the blade and said, "I can tell that this knife has been with you for many years." "Not bad," Li Yuanfang said. "Since serving in Liangzhou, I have been with you." Renjie smiled at the words and said, "The official document from Lingzhou says that the constables were killed by the sword." Upon hearing this, Li Yuanfang was overjoyed. He knew that Lord D had finally believed what he had said. At this moment, someone outside the door hurriedly shouted, "Mr. D, Mr. D." "Who is it?" Renjie asked calmly. "Sir, it is the 1,000 bull guards from the capital who have come to deliver orders," replied the person outside the door. Renjie immediately signaled to Xing and Li Yuanfang, and the two of them immediately understood and rushed into the inner room to hide. After the guard's announcement was completed, Renjie used the excuse of packing up and asked them to go down and wait first. After the guards left, Xing and Li Yuanfang walked out of the inner room. "It seems that they have already started taking action," Renjie suddenly said. "Gong, what do you mean by this?" Xing asked in confusion. Li Yuanfang also cast a puzzled look. Renjie smiled and said, "The Qian that was just announced is fake." "What?" Li Yuanfang was surprised at the words. "Who is so bold as to pretend to be the emperor's exclusive guard?" "I don't have time to explain now, you two just listen to me." Renjie quickly informed Shen and Li of his plan. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Celestial Sphere. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Celestial Sphere. Outside the inn, the 1,000 bull guard, who had been waiting for a long time, finally saw Renjie wearing a cloak getting onto the carriage. A group of guards escorted the carriage and it quickly disappeared into the darkness. Before long, the carriage came to a secluded alley and stopped. The leader of the Qian team suddenly gave a fierce smile and shouted, "Take action." As soon as the words fell, dozens of black-robed archers suddenly emerged from the houses on both sides, shooting arrows at the carriage where Renjie was located. In just a few breaths, the carriage had already been pierced into hedgehogs by arrows. The leading Qian guard saw that there was no movement inside the car and was about to come forward to check. Suddenly, a cold light shot out of the carriage like lightning, instantly piercing through the visitor's head. The Qian guards on the side saw this and pulled out their hard swords from their waist, charging towards them together. Speaking slowly and quickly, there was only a loud bang, and the wooden carriage suddenly split into pieces. The fragments from the explosion shot the surrounding group of 1,000 bull guards into sieves. The archers on the rooftops on both sides were about to bow and shoot arrows when they heard a whoosh sound from the air. A chain knife broke through the air and strung more than 10 black-clothed archers into a string. On the other side, there was a light and agile sword chant, and the cold sword light was like a seductive impermanence, instantly cutting through the throat of the Black Arrow warrior, leaving people under the sword. With a loud shout, he finally stopped the impermanence of seduction and temporarily saved the last black-clothed man's life. Renjie kicked the archer off the roof with one kick, and then followed him like a ghost, instantly pressing the sword edge against his throat. In the darkness, Renjie slowly walked out and said coldly to the archer, "A question, I'll let you go. How many people have you ambushed outside the city?" The black-clothed man in the clinker suddenly changed his complexion, his muscles almost twisted, and after a moment, he fell heavily. "Suicide!" Renjie exclaimed in shock. "What a fierce killer!" Renjie couldn't help but sigh. "Sir, what should we do now?" Li Yuanfang asked. "At this point, they will never let us leave," Renjie replied. "These assassins are all fugitives. Even if we return to the inn, they will not give up easily. Instead, they will implicate the innocent guards in the inn. Then I'll escort you out," Renjie suggested. Although it was a reckless remark, it was not difficult to protect Renjie and rush out with his and Li Yuanfang's martial arts skills. "No way." Renjie immediately stopped. "The other party has a large number of people and meticulous planning. We should not compete with them hard, we can only get rid of them." After speaking, he took Renjie and Li Yuanfang to hide in a nearby room. "The most dangerous place is the safest place. If those people come here and see the black-clad assassin dying and injured, they will think they have escaped and never think they dare to stay here." After about a stick of incense, a large number of people arrived here. However, they only observed the scene briefly and quickly left. After the group of people left, Renjie slowly walked out of the room. Renjie then said, "Take advantage of this and leave the city immediately." On the outskirts of Chang'an, earthen kills after leaving the city with Renjie and Li Yuanfang, Renjie headed straight to this place. This was originally the place where the prisoner Lu Jin was detained, but now it has been burned down into ruins by a big fire. Renjie looked at the ruins and carefully searched every corner, finally discovering a corner of the remaining white silk handkerchief. "Why didn't you go to Subdues instead of coming here?" Li Yuanfang said inexplicably. "I'm not sure," Renjie replied. "I think Duke D's move has other profound implications. Although he is clear in his heart, it is impossible for him to speak out." At this moment, Renjie walked over and said, "Let's go back to the inn." In this way, Li Yuanfang, who was confused, and Renjie, who was pretending to be confused, accompanied Renjie back to the inn. Inside the inn, Renjie said to Renjie and Li Yuanfang, "In 3 days, the emperor will go to Yuanjue temple to offer incense. I will secretly meet with the emperor in the temple. You two are waiting here for now. I will come to see you when I see the emperor." Unlike the original work, Renjie did not analyze the case together with Li Yuanfang. It is believed that the addition of Renjie made Renjie more cautious, so he kept the details of the case confidential. Renjie and Li Yuanfang exchanged a glance and nodded together. 3 days later, Renjie left. Renjie stayed at the inn with Li Yuanfang. Now, he finally has time to sort out the current situation. At present, it seems that he has successfully infiltrated Renjie's side. Although he has not fully gained Renjie's trust, at least he has been connected to him. The first step of his plan has also been successfully completed. As for why he did this, we need to start with the reason why he traveled through time. He was originally a student in modern society, but he found a broken celestial globe in the antique market and inexplicably reincarnated into this world. In this world, his real name is not Xinyoji, but Li Xian. His grandfather was Li Tai, the Prince of Pu, the fourth son of Emperor Taizong and Empress Wendi, and also the legitimate brother of Tang Gaozong Li Ji. His father was Li Xian, who inherited the title of Prince Pu. Although not in the lineage of Emperor Gaozong Li Ji of Tang, he is also a legitimate member of the Li Tang royal family. If at other times, the identity of royal descendants would naturally be born at the finish line. In Youzhou, under the rule of Empress Wuzetian, the only empress who changed Tang to Zhou, descendants of Li Tang were not a good identity. It can't be said that you lost at the starting line, it can only be considered that you were born on the edge of a cliff. Fortunately, Xinyoji knew the direction of history, so he joined the Daoist sect before Empress Wuzetian declared herself emperor. With the memory of his past life and his wisdom, Xinyoji was able to understand the essence of Taoism from a young age. He recited the Taoist scriptures every day and did not ask about common things, so he was known as a Taoist idiot. Even Sima Qingjiao, the heavenly master of the Maoshan sect and one of the 10 friends of the immortal sect, praised him for his innate Tao nature. With these titles, Xinyoji was enfeoffed in Changzhou, far away from Luoyang, where the Taoist holy land of Maoshan sect is located, and became a leisurely prince. He also moved away from the political center as a result, avoiding Wuzetian's cleansing of the descendants of the Li surname. And the celestial globe that caused him to cross has been staying in his mud ball palace since he crossed. As long as he closes his eyes and focuses, he can see it. This celestial globe is yellowed all over and is made of an unknown material. Apart from the base, there is only one longitude and latitude line engraved with the words, Divine Empress. The Queen of the Gods is actually the rat, the head of the 12 elements. Xinyoji speculated based on this that this celestial globe originally had 12 meridians and latitudes, but for some reason it was damaged to the point where only one remained. Not only that, Xinyoji can also feel the information coming from this celestial globe. However, since arriving in this world until now, the celestial globe has only been passed down to him with 4 words. Ruling the world. The meaning of these 4 words is self-evident. But when is it now? It's Youzhou. During this period, the Li royal family was fortunate to have survived. Who dares to interfere with that supreme position? Not to mention being the prince of an, even Wu Zetian's biological son, Crown Prince Li Xian, had to be cautious in every word and action, living a life of anxiety every day. Why is this happening? Without him, the lesson from the past is still before our eyes. Isn't Prince Zhonghui, Li Xian, also the biological son of Empress Wu Zetian back then? She was not killed by Wu Zetian yet. No matter who it is, as long as it may threaten Wu Zetian's position, even if it is her own son, she will not hesitate to eliminate it. If it weren't for the death protection of the crown prince by the Li Tang faction, Wu Zetian wouldn't have completely broken with the Li Tang faction in the court. I'm afraid Li Xian would have become the second Li Xian. So what about Xinyoji? Although he is Qian, he is not from the lineage of Emperor Gaozong, let alone Wu Zetian. That is to say, even if Wu Zetian abdicates, it is not his turn to inherit the throne. So, if he wants to achieve the goal of ruling over the world, it is absolutely impossible to go through formal channels. Fortunately, this is not the historical Youzhou, but the Youzhou of Detective D. Renjie. This gives Xinyoji a certain amount of operational space. You should know that in the world of Detective D. Renjie, there are martial arts and disguise techniques. Just like now, Xinyoji not only possesses excellent martial arts skills, but also wears a face that has been transformed. D. Renjie has been with him for so long, but he never realized that his face is actually easy to tolerate. Because D. Renjie's first encounter with the almost bug-like, disguising technique will have to wait until the upcoming Youzhou case. With the unknown nickname, Xinyoji, and the innate advantage of being familiar with the plot, as long as the operation is done well, it is not impossible to dominate the world. The first step of Xin Yu's plan is to eliminate Wang Yuanqi. Because the fiefdom of Prince Yingwang Yuanqi is located in Yangzhou, adjacent to his hometown of Changzhou. When Su Jingye rebelled, Yuanqi destroyed his family and made great contributions. He was granted the title of Prince Ying by Empress Wu Zetian, and his fiefdom was located in Yangzhou. Yuanqi had a great influence, and not only did the officials in Yangzhou follow his lead, but several surrounding counties also had his minions. If Xing wants to develop his own power, he must first remove the sharp sword hanging over his head, Yuanqi. Otherwise, if he makes any big moves, he will be noticed by Yuanqi, and there will be only a dead end waiting for him. However, it is absolutely impossible for Xing alone to eliminate Yuanqi. Because his character is an idle prince who is dedicated to seeking the way, and his subordinates have no other influence except for a few confidants. Yuanqi not only controlled the official circles in Yangzhou, but also raised thousands of fugitives in the Iron Hand Regiment under his command. The difference in strength between the two is too significant. Xing can only rely on external forces to eliminate Yuanqi. For this reason, he thought of Renjie. That's when he intercepted the Imperial Guard alone. In the original work, the Yangzhou case was brought about by the death of Han Go's shipwreck and Li Han, a doctor in the Ministry of Water. In terms of time, it will be at least 10 years later. But Xing can't wait for 10 years. Therefore, he could only put Yuanqi's conspiracy on the table in advance and use Renjie's hand to eliminate Yuanqi. Although Yuanqi has not yet planned the shocking case of Han Go's shipwreck, it is a fact that he privately raised Iron Hand assassins and colluded with Yangzhou officials to embezzle the wages of the transport workers. The latter charge may not have resulted in death, but as long as the former charge diverges slightly, it is enough to convict him of treason. A king with a different surname actually secretly raised thousands of fugitives. Based on this alone, 10 Yuanqi were not enough for Wu Zetian to kill. As long as Yuanqi is eliminated, Xing can secretly develop his own power, and when the time comes, he can dominate the world. This is a long plan. Now, this plan has just taken the first step. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Youzhou Case. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter for the Youzhou case. Inside the inn. After these days of recuperation, Li Yuanfang's injury has almost healed. His injuries were mostly skin injuries, and the most devastating one was the lack of rest for months to avoid pursuit, resulting in physical and mental exhaustion. Now, after 3 consecutive days of rest, he has naturally regained his spirit. Li Yuanfang, who had recovered from his injuries, thought of the agreement he had made with Xing that day. Li Yuanfang suddenly asked, "Brother Shen, that night when I fought with you, I found that your swordsmanship was light, agile, and natural. It was completely natural and had the style of a great master. I wonder which school you studied from." He believes in his exceptional martial arts skills. Even if he is not the best in the world, he is definitely among the top 5. But that night he broke into the Crimson Tent, and Xing was able to subdue him within 10 breaths. Although he was severely injured and exhausted at the time, it was also evident that Xing's martial arts skills were not ordinary. Brother Yuanfang praised me too much. Xing smiled and said, "I don't have any apprenticeship, what I have learned are all martial arts passed down from my family." He lied. In fact, the internal skill that Xing cultivates is the orthodox Taoist guidance technique, and his swordsmanship is also the authentic Xianmen swordsmanship. Over the past 20 years, this Taoist idiot has not only seen Daozang. It's just that he has already integrated those martial arts into his own things, so when applied, it's natural and unique, and it's difficult for ordinary people to see his martial arts foundation. Li Yuanfang heard him say it was a family tradition, so she didn't ask any more questions. After all, this is not a strange thing. There are countless adventurers in the martial arts world who have learned the unique skills passed down from family. To be honest, Li Yuanfang said again, when I left my sect and joined the army, my master said that my martial arts skills could at least rank among the top 5 in the world. Since joining the army, I have experienced numerous battles, both big and small, and have advanced my swordsmanship and internal skills, making it difficult for me to face opponents. You are the first opponent who can surprise me, Brother Shen. The pit viper doesn't count. Because the pit viper was a surprise attack, and he was responsible for guarding at the time, unable to fight with all his might. If it were 1-on-1 fighting alone, Li Yuanfang would not lose to the pit viper. Brother Yuanfang is too humble, Xing said. With your martial arts skills, you can at least enter the top 3 in the world. If it weren't for you being seriously injured and exhausted that day, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to defeat you throughout the detective series. Only a few people like Yuan Qi and Huiwenzhong can compete with Li Yuanfang. Although his martial arts were not yet fully developed at this time, it can be said that only Prince Xing, Yuan Qi, could have achieved a steady victory over him. Li Yuanfang shook her head and said, Brother Shen, your swordsmanship has become your own and has the aura of a great master. Based solely on this, your martial arts skills will never be inferior to mine. Even if I compete with you in my prime, the outcome is still 5-5. This is quite true. Xing's evaluation of his own strength is also the same. So, when we have time in the future, let's have another sparring. Xing suggested. Great. It's a rare pleasure to compete with a master like Brother Shen. Li Yuanfang responded arrogantly. At this point, a basic friendship has also been established between the two. 2 days later, Renjie, who went to Yuanjue temple to secretly meet Wu Zetian, returned. Along with him came a tall and burly man. Although this person is dressed in regular clothes, he has rules for walking, sitting, and lying, unlike ordinary people. Xing knew that this was Hu Jinghui. Sir, you're here. Li Yuanfang was pleasantly surprised to see Renjie. Gong. Xing also arched his hand and said. Renjie nodded to the two of them, then pointed to the man beside him and introduced, this is the general of the 1,000 Bull Guard, Tiger Jinghui, next to the emperor. The mission case is closely related, and the emperor sent him to assist me in handling the case, Jinghui. This is Xing, Renjie introduced to Hu Jinghui. The other one is Li Yuanfang. Xing and Li Yuanfang arched their hands together and said, I've seen General Tiger. Hu Jinghui only slightly arched his hand upon hearing this, with a somewhat haughty expression on his face. He is a personal guard of the royal family, a 4th-rank 1,000 Bull Guard general, even high-ranking officials and officials in the court would not take him seriously. The inexperienced guerrilla general in front of him is still guilty, and the other is a white-collar ranger without even an official position, so it's not worth his trouble. Xing and Li Yuanfang exchanged a glance, both feeling somewhat embarrassed. Alright, Renjie quickly came out to mediate, saying, the case is urgent and cannot be delayed for a moment. Let's set off immediately. Sir. Hu Jinghui finally spoke up, the emperor has appointed you as an imperial envoy, but why do you not accompany the guards and instead act privately? Renjie smiled mysteriously upon hearing the words and replied, you can't say it, you can't say it. On the side, Xing silently thought to himself. It seems that the next step should be to officially enter the Youzhou case. Although the Youzhou case is complex and confusing, with one major case involving several minor cases, it appears to be complicated and unclear. However, as long as the main plot is grasped, it is easy to understand. The mastermind of Youzhou is Jean Mulan, also known as Li Qingxia, the princess of Yang. Her ultimate goal is to collude with the Turks, overthrow Wuzhou Jiangshan, and become the second female emperor herself. Li Qingxia's plan can be roughly divided into 2 lines. Internal and external. Externally, they colluded with the rebel forces within the Turkic territory, killed the Shibi Khan and Jili Khan of the Turkic peace faction, and helped the main war faction lead the Turks. Internally, he colluded with the governor of Youzhou, Fang Qian, to develop his own influence in Youzhou. It is worth mentioning that the identity of the governor of Youzhou, Fang Qian, is very special. His real name is Lu Jin, and he was a staff member of the king of Yu. Lu Jin has a list in his hand, which records the names of several ministers who participated in the rebellion of the king of Yu that year. Wu Zetian naturally wanted to know who those anti-Wu people were. Therefore, Lu Jin fell into the hands of Qian Niuwei and was subjected to severe torture to extract a confession. So, the first thing Jean Mulan did was intercept the mission and replace the real mission with a fake one to enter Beijing. After the pit viper rescued Lu Jin, who was imprisoned in the earthen kiln, if the group had taken Lu Jin with them, they would have left Chengdu unnoticed. During Lu Jin's arrest, there was naturally no one in charge of Youzhou. In order not to be discovered by the court that Lu Jin was the governor of Youzhou, Fang Qian, Jean Mulan had to send someone to disguise himself as Fang Qian, which led to the case of true and false Fang Qian. In Jean Mulan's vision, the ultimate outcome was to cooperate internally and externally, relying on Lu Jin's list to contact the anti-military forces in the court, then occupying Youzhou and opening the country wide to allow the Turkic army to invade Wuzhou, helping her overthrow the Wuzhou court and become the second female emperor. Let's not talk about how childish her idea of luring wolves into the house is, nor about where her confidence comes from as a snake spirit chess piece, surpassing Xiao Qingfang to become the emperor himself. Let's just talk about practical operations, and neither of these two lines, Jean Mulan, has played well. Externally, although they killed the Shibi Khan, they were unable to kill Jili and fled to Youzhou under his pseudonym Li'er. Although the fake governor Fang Qian sent people to capture Li'er, the execution was interrupted by the riot launched by the villagers of Daliashu village, and Li'er took the opportunity to escape. Afterwards, the viper caught Li'er and almost killed him, but in the end, Li'er, who was poisoned, escaped to Xialianzi village and was rescued by villager Lu Dao. Finally, Renjie came to stay at Lu Dao's house and happened to save Li'er, who was on the brink of death from poisoning. This ultimately led to contact between Jili and Renjie, and through Renjie, they reached out to Wu Zetian, who was able to use the Wuzhou army to quell the internal turmoil of the Turks. In this way, the plan for the outside world completely failed, and Jean Mulan's fantasy of trying to borrow the power of the Turks was completely shattered. As for the inner line, due to the need for weapons, armor, and food for the uprising, the governor of Youzhou, fake Fang Qian, and Sima Wu Yiji secretly arrested the villagers of Xialianzi village, enslaving them to dig iron ore and forge weapons and armor at night, creating the illusion of a so-called ghost town. Not only that, they also embezzled consolation funds from the villagers of Daliashu village, leading to riots among the villagers and indirectly causing Li'er to flee the legal field while taking advantage of the chaos. Afterwards, Renjie followed suit and started with the corruption case, uncovering the false Fang Qian's conspiracy to rebel. Under the helplessness of Fang Qian, he could only rise up early and rebel. But this hasty action was quickly suppressed by Renjie. Fake Fang Qian was also silenced by Jean Mulan as a result. At this point, Jean Mulan could only release Fang Qian, also known as Lu Jin, and designed a bitter meat scheme to turn Fang Qian into a victim of being detained by criminals, in order to win the sympathy and trust of Renjie. Unfortunately, this plan also fell through. Renjie quickly exposed Fang Qian's lies and exposed his identity as a staff member of the King of Yu. At this point, Jean Mulan's plan has almost collapsed. In order not to reveal her identity, she had to let the viper kill Lu Jin and take the risk of assassinating Li'er. After a series of investigations, Renjie had already identified the identity of the pit viper, so he tricked and caught Li'er on the spot when the pit viper was assassinating him. After learning that the snake had failed to assassinate Li'er, Jean Mulan could only take a desperate gamble. She immediately decided to use Li Daitao's strategy and let her maid replace her, creating a false image of the bandit leader Jean Mulan fearing suicide. She then pretended to be an innocent princess kidnapped by criminals and, after being rescued, lurked by Renjie's side. Subsequently, she took the opportunity to unite with the forces in Youzhou city, preparing to seize Youzhou. Before Li Er returned to the Turks, she joined forces with the main faction of the Turks to overthrow Youzhou. However, Renjie had already noticed her flaws and quelled the internal turmoil in Youzhou, resulting in the complete failure of Jean Mulan's plan. This is the beginning and end of the Youzhou case. One purpose, two main lines, involving large and small branch lines, makes it look intricate and confusing. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Renjie's Doubt. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Renjie's Doubt. Tea stalls in Youzhou city. On a small square table, an old and three young are drinking tea. These four people are the investigation team led by Renjie. Renjie was drinking bitter tea made by the locals while observing the heavily guarded Youzhou city. He found that the soldiers in Youzhou were being scrutinized very harshly. Anyone passing by, regardless of gender, age, not only needs to check their identity documents, but also needs to open and carefully examine the bags they carry. This is not an ordinary city defense at all, but rather like searching for someone. When he first entered the city, Hu Jinghui almost got into a conflict with the soldiers guarding the city. Little second brother, Renjie suddenly stopped the tea-pouring servant and asked with a smile, "I don't know what happened in Youzhou city, why is it so martial law?" Upon hearing this, the waiter exclaimed in surprise, "Why haven't you heard about it?" Renjie shook his head and replied, "I'm new here and I'm not aware of it." The waiter nodded and explained, "Last night, the villagers of Daliashu village rebelled and were thrown into prison, taking away more than 10 prisoners. Riot. Renjie was surprised in his heart and continued to ask, "When I first entered the city, I saw a group of women, children, and elderly people tied to the execution platform. Why is this?" Speaking of which, the younger brother couldn't help but sigh and say, "What a crime." The official army couldn't catch the mob, so they arrested all the elderly, women, and children in the village. A notice was also posted, stating that if the thugs do not surrender in 3 days, they will kill all the elderly, women, and children. After finishing speaking, the younger brother shook his head helplessly and went to add tea to other guests with a teapot. Pop. Renjie slammed the table fiercely and cursed angrily, "How unreasonable." The governor of Youzhou, a high-ranking official, did not know how to support the people on behalf of the emperor. He actually committed such acts of bullying the weak and underestimating people's lives, which is truly a crime worthy of death. Shenyoji and Li Yuanfang nodded heavily upon hearing this. It is said that this is a prosperous era, but the people in this era still suffer unbearably. Only Hu Jinghui comforted and said, "Sir, we still have important cases for the court. Should we let these small matters go for now? Let's wait until the case is solved before we can discuss it." Until now, he still didn't understand why Renjie didn't go to Gannan Road where the mission was committed, but instead came to Youzhou. Small matters. Renjie's eyes were electrified as he looked at Hu Jinghui and said angrily, "There are no small matters related to people's livelihood. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it." Hu Jinghui saw that Renjie was really angry and quickly said, "Jinghui is ignorant, please forgive me." Renjie shook his head and sighed, "You are the emperor's personal guard, and you hold the highest position in the temple, so you don't understand these people's hardships. I can't blame you." Renjie didn't know that Hu Jinghui was not a playboy. He climbed up from the bottom step by step. How could he not understand the suffering of the people? He said those words just to fit his identity. On the contrary, it was Renjie's heartfelt words that made Hu Jinghui admire him. He is the emperor's personal guard, responsible for inspecting all officials and has seen countless cunning and evil officials who are greedy, lawless, and reckless in their lives. Like Renjie, who is willing to speak up for the people, Qinglu naturally admires him sincerely. Not only him, but also Li Yuanfang beside him showed even greater respect to this upright Mr. D. "Let's take a walk to the surrounding towns first," Renjie decided. I want to see what kind of disaster this governor of Youzhou has caused here. Renjie's decision has been made, and the other three are obedient. Subsequently, the four of them turned around and went to the nearby countryside. Daliashu village. Renjie took Xing and his three companions around and unexpectedly arrived here. Xing couldn't help but marvel at Renjie's luck. It was as if he had divine assistance. However, although it was broad daylight at this time, the village of Daliashu was empty, and even the sound of chickens and dogs could not be heard. The silence around was a bit eerie, like a ghost village. Suddenly, a figure flashed by in a hurry. Renjie was pleasantly surprised and said, "There are still people here." Xing was even more agile, using his lightness skills to stop the figure. The person was so frightened that they hugged their heads and cried bitterly when they saw their way blocked. "Don't kill me! Don't kill me! Lord Jun, spare your life!" Upon hearing the sound, it turned out to be a woman. Renjie walked up and quickly helped her up, comforting her, "Don't be afraid, we are not official soldiers." The woman carefully lifted her head and saw that the person coming was a kind and amiable old man. She gradually let go of her guard and cautiously asked, "Old man, why are you here?" Renjie smiled and said, "I got lost, that's why I came here unexpectedly." Immediately, he asked again, "Is there anyone else in this village?" The woman shook her head and said, "I don't know either. The men in the village rebelled and ran away, while the rest who couldn't run were captured by the government army. My child and I also hid in the Kong cave to avoid being caught. I'm really starving today, so I came out to find something to eat." Upon hearing the tragic plight of these villagers, Renjie sympathized and said, "Sister-in-law, go to each house and see if there is anyone left. Call them all over. I have some dry food here, let's share it with everyone." The woman's eyes lit up when she heard something to eat, but she hesitated and said hesitantly, "So, what if the official army comes?" Renjie smiled and said, "Don't be afraid, I guarantee they won't dare to harm you. Women don't believe it, how can an elderly person be a match for the government army?" But when she saw Xing and the three others around Renjie, each wielding swords, she was not an ordinary person, so she hesitated to gather the survivors of the village. In no time, the surviving villagers of Daliashu village were gathered together. These people were all elderly, weak, women, and children who couldn't run, each skinny and obviously starving. Renjie quickly took out dry food and distributed it all to these poor people. The villagers immediately nodded in gratitude upon seeing this, and even referred to Renjie as the land god. Renjie reluctantly accepted this identity and then asked an elderly citizen, "Old man, I heard that the men in your village have rebelled and are wanted by the court. Can you tell me?" The old man sighed and recounted the county magistrate's embezzlement of comfort funds, slandering the villagers of Daliashu village for rebelling against the Turks, and forcing them to rebel. After hearing this, Renjie's face turned pale with anger, and his anger surged towards the heavenly spirit. He then sighed and said, "The government is forcing the people to rebel. Old man, don't worry, I will definitely make the decision for you." The old man listened and said goodbye again. That night, the four of them rested in Daliashu village. Rainy night, thunder. Renjie, who was sleeping soundly, was awakened by a thunderbolt. The oppressive atmosphere on a rainy night made him feel a bit chest tightness, and he immediately got up to drink some water. He had just picked up the pottery bowl on the table and was about to drink it when another lightning bolt pierced through the darkness. With the light of lightning, Renjie noticed some black residue in the bowl. At this moment, there was another rustling sound, and upon hearing it, Renjie saw a pit viper coiled around the window. Renjie was suddenly taken aback, and the pottery bowl was almost thrown away. However, the viper did not take any action and disappeared into the darkness with a swoop. After this experience, Renjie became even more restless and immediately put on his clothes and went to the outer room. Outer house. There are 3 beds here. Originally, 3 people were supposed to sleep, but now one bed is empty. Xinyouzhi and Hu Jinghui are sleeping soundly, but Li Yuanfang is nowhere to be found. Di Gong, why did you come? Xinyouzhi, who was originally asleep, suddenly sat up and stared blankly at Di Renjie, asking. Just then, another deep voice rang out on its own, Mr. D. Di Renjie suddenly turned around and found that it was Li Yuanfang standing at the door. Di Renjie smiled and replied to the two, It's nothing, I just can't sleep. Come out and breathe some air. At this moment, Hu Jinghui was also awakened and asked drowsily, Sir, why are you all awake? Di Renjie sighed and said, I can't sleep. Yuji and Yuanfang, tomorrow Jinghui and I will immediately rush to Youzhou. Di Renjie suddenly said, You two will stay in Daliashu village for the time being to protect these villagers. After we return to Youzhou and arrange everything, you can bring these villagers to join us. Upon hearing Di Renjie's arrangement, Xinyouzhi and Li Yuanfang exchanged a glance and nodded, saying, Yes. The arrangement of dividing the troops into two routes may seem reasonable, but there is a great deal of mystery involved. Xinyouzhi understood that Di Renjie was now suspecting himself and Li Yuanfang, so he left him and only Hu Jinghui behind. After all, Hu Jinghui is a 1,000-bull guard middle general personally appointed by the emperor, with a rank of 4th grade, and his identity is absolutely reliable. Although Li Yuanfang cleared the suspicion of the mission's interception case, it is difficult to guarantee that it was not a bitter tactic, so he was unable to gain the full trust of Di Renjie. As for Xinyouzhi, he was originally a wandering figure in the martial arts world who had been killed halfway through. His identity was a mystery, and he was even more unreliable than Li Yuanfang. 3 people compared, of course, Tiger Jinghui, as the emperor's personal guard, is more trustworthy. After Di Renjie and Hu Jinghui left, they did not immediately rush to Youzhou, but instead turned to the nearby Xialianzi village to investigate the case. There, Di Renjie will rescue Li Er who has been poisoned and unconscious, and be charged with being a spy by the subordinates of the governor fake Fang Qian, and escorted to the governor's office. Afterwards, Di Renjie revealed his identity and pretended to perform the hilarious scene of disdainful in front and respectful in the back, on the spot. Di Renjie proceeded to investigate the corruption of comfort funds by County Magistrate Zhao Chuanchen, which led to a riot among the villagers of Daliashu village. Prior to this, both Xinyouzhi and Li Yuanfang should no longer have access to the core of this case. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Second Battle of Li Yuanfang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Second Battle of Li Yuanfang. The next day, early morning, Di Renjie left Daliashu village early with Hu Jinghui. Xinyouzhi and Li Yuanfang, on the other hand, followed orders to stay and protect the elderly, weak, women, and children here. Brother Shen, do you think of something else? Li Yuanfang suddenly asked Xinyouzhi. Xinyouzhi replied, Most likely so. At this point, he laughed at himself and said, It seems that the Lord doesn't trust us, so he only left with General Tiger. Li Yuanfang also smiled bitterly upon hearing these words. He is not foolish either, of course. It can be seen that Di Renjie is familiar with the 3 of them. But who made him still feel guilty now? However, those who are clear will clear themselves. Li Yuanfang believes that as long as the truth is revealed, Lord Di will definitely trust him. Brother Shen, why don't you and I have nothing to do? Why don't we take this opportunity to have a sparring? Li Yuanfang suddenly said impulsively. His injury has long recovered, and now he rarely has time. Instead of spending time, it's better to find something to do. Upon hearing these words, Xinyouzhi also became interested and responded, Okay. He also wants to have a good martial arts exchange with Li Yuanfang. After all, working behind closed doors is better than brainstorming. Dueling with experts like Li Yuanfang is also very beneficial for oneself. Immediately, the 2 of them found an open rice field in Daliashu village. Li Yuanfang held a chain knife and said to Xinyouzhi, Brother Shen, please." Xinyoji nodded, and the long sword in his hand suddenly unsheathed, like a dragon out of the sea, roaring straight towards Li Yuanfang. Li Yuanfang immediately blocked the situation with a horizontal knife grid, ding. The swords clashed and made a crisp sound. Xinyoji missed a single blow, and the strength in his hand continued to push and spread all the way to the tip of his sword, shocking Li Yuanfang back a few steps. What a profound internal power! Li Yuanfang was amazed in her heart. Just now, with a gentle push from Xinyoji, a tremendous force was transmitted to the tip of the sword, and even through the blade, Li Yuanfang could feel unparalleled power. Unexpectedly, Brother Shen not only excels in swordsmanship, but also excels in internal skills. Hurry up! Li Yuanfang was overjoyed to be able to compete with such a master, which was truly a great pleasure in life. Just now, Xinyoji revealed his hand, and now Li Yuanfang is not willing to be outdone. He lightly stepped on his feet, and his body rushed toward Xinyoji like a ghost. His speed is extremely fast, and his body movements are even more eerie, as if one person has transformed into three people, wielding knives from three different directions to kill. What a fast speed! Xinyoji couldn't help but marvel in his heart. Seeing the three Li Yuanfang coming from three different directions, Xinyoji wielded a sword flower in his hand and transformed into three sword shadows, blocking all of Li Yuanfang's attacks. This was originally the Xianmen Liangyi sword technique, but it was innovated by Xinyoji and could instantly pierce three sword shadows. Good swordsmanship. Li Yuanfang didn't expect Xinyoji's swordsmanship to be so profound, and he easily broke his body technique. Li Yuanfang's body method was broken, and she felt a chill in her heart. She then danced her rigid sword again, transforming into a fierce sword like a raging wind and rain, hitting Xinyoji. Li Yuanfang's martial arts absorbed the clever changes of martial arts in the martial arts world, and also blend the grand opening and closing of military martial arts, pursuing the ultimate in strength and speed. At this moment, he swung his sword with all his might, its shadow impenetrable and without any flaws. Upon seeing this, Xinyoji's sword technique also changed. The long sword in his hand seemed to have turned into a magnet, tightly gripping Li Yuanfang's chained sword, preventing it from freely changing. This is exactly the Tai Chi sword technique in Xianmen swordsmanship, which uses force to transform power. The Tai Chi sword technique emphasizes the use of slow and fast techniques, as well as the use of borrowed strength, to deal with Li Yuanfang's swift sword technique. Li Yuanfang only felt that Xinyoji's long sword suddenly produced a strange suction, which not only made his sword technique become sluggish, but also several times made his long sword almost want to be released. Fortunately, he had profound internal skills and a strong physique, which enabled him to firmly grasp the handle of the knife. In terms of moves alone, he was completely at a disadvantage and completely caught up in the rhythm of Xinyoji. Although he had known Xinyoji's exceptional swordsmanship even before the competition, he had already developed his own master style. But at this moment, after a real competition, Li Yuanfang realized what the so-called effortless and flexible realm was. Although the moves are slightly inferior, the martial arts are not just limited to moves. With a flick of Li Yuanfang's thumb, the mechanical expansion of the chain knife was instantly triggered, and the blade shot out like lightning. Faced with this sudden change, Xinyoji's sword technique suddenly paused. Upon seeing this, Li Yuanfang swung his right arm again and waved the iron chain like a long whip. Not only that, he once again used his lightness skills and circled around Xinyu. The dancing iron chains, combined with Li Yuanfang's eerie body movements, trapped Xinyoji like a wandering dragon. Xinyoji raised his sword to block the attack of the iron chain while observing the opponent's weaknesses. Quickly, he noticed that Li Yuanfang's body movements were following the position of the 8 gates, and as he was about to thrust his long sword, it would directly pierce the showman where Li Yuanfang was about to fall. Li Yuanfang was about to take his place when he saw a sharp sword rushing out of the constraints of the dragon like a meteor from outside the sky, piercing straight towards him. Without time to think carefully, he immediately dodged on his side. Although he dodged Xinyouji's sword, his own footwork became chaotic. An iron chain dragon suddenly revealed a flaw. Xinyouji seized the loophole in the blink of an eye, and with a flick of his long sword, he lifted the dragon head blade out of the air. Whoosh, ding. The blade spun a few times in the air and then plunged into the ground. I lost. Li Yuanfang saw the situation and said calmly. There is a heaven beyond heaven, and there are people beyond man. Losing is losing, and there is nothing embarrassing. Please accept. Xinyouji arched his hand. Although he won a move, Xinyouji was not complacent either. Because this was just a sparring, not a life and death battle, both of them made efforts. If it were a battle of life and death, with Li Yuanfang's bravery, Xinyouji may not necessarily be the one who survived. Brother Shen, I see that your swordsmanship is naturally agile and full of mystical charm. Did your ancestors once be a Taoist? Li Yuanfang withdrew his chain knife and curiously said. He remembered Xinyouji saying that he practiced traditional martial arts, which is why he asked this question. Not bad, Xinyouji replied, my ancestors did come from a Taoist family. Upon closer examination, this is not a lie. Li Tang recognized Taoist Laozi as his ancestor, and Xinyouji was right to say that his ancestors were Taoist sections. I see. Li Yuanfang nodded and then said happily, today's battle was extremely enjoyable. If there were good wine now, I would really want to have a good meal. It's a pity to have a sword but no wine. Upon hearing this, Xinyouji only smiled slightly and did not say much. Actually, he doesn't drink alcohol. Because alcohol can numb nerves and make thinking slow. Xinyouji doesn't like that feeling. Ah. Li Yuanfang suddenly sighed and said with some melancholy, I really hope that the adults can solve this case as soon as possible. Xinyouji knew that he was still feeling uneasy about his guilt, so he comforted him and said, Brother Yuanfang, please rest assured. With the power of Duke Di, this case will definitely be solved. Li Yuanfang nodded. Mr. Di has witnessed the ability to analyze the case with his own eyes, so he naturally believes that the other party can solve the case. 3 days later, someone from Youzhou finally came to deliver a message, saying that the imperial envoy had summoned Xinyouji and Li Yuanfang to return to the Youzhou prefecture with their people. It seems that Lord Di has already arranged everything. Li Yuanfang exclaimed in surprise. Xinyouji felt much calmer and said, since that's the case, let's immediately take the villagers and return to Youzhou. Li Yuanfang nodded and then went to gather the villagers. The group quickly set off for Youzhou. Youzhou, governor's office. As soon as Xinyouji and Li Yuanfang arrived at the mansion, Di Chun greeted them with a smile and said, General Li, Prince Shen, the master is waiting for you in the main hall. Upon hearing this, the two of them followed Di Chun straight to the main hall. Main room. Yuanfang, Yuji, you're here. Di Renjie immediately greeted the two of them. Your Excellency, Duke Di. Shen and Li also arched their hands and walked back. After the three of them sat down, Di Renjie asked the villagers of Daliashu village. Sir, my humble duty and brother Shen have taken them to the government office. You can inquire at any time, Li Yuanfang replied. Okay. Di Renjie said, tomorrow I will be promoted to the court to investigate the corruption and consolation funds. He had already sensed the suspicions of the governor Fang Qian, so he wanted to knock the mountain and shake the tiger. But Xinyouji knew that Di Renjie was going to make a mistake this time. Because before ascending to the court, villager Zhang Laosi would be poisoned by Hu Jinghui, threatening him not to speak nonsense in the court. However, this matter has to be taken care of by Di Renjie, the imperial envoy. It's not his turn as a ranger to take over. Moreover, at this moment, Di Renjie has not yet lifted his suspicion of him. Even if he wants to help, Di Renjie probably won't allow it. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Changes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 changes the development of the matter is indeed as described in the original work. Zhang Laosi overturned the case in the court, saying that his previous words in Daliasha village were all nonsense and that the consolation money had not been embezzled. Renjie was caught off guard by this sudden incident and could only hastily end the court trial. Youzhou, Wuyuan, although small, this garden is exquisitely designed and is a great place for rest and recuperation. And Renjie, the imperial envoy, was also stationed here by Fang Qian. In the main hall, Renjie carefully reviewed the details of the court hearing. Zhang Laosi initially wanted to confess truthfully, but suddenly changed his mind halfway through. Renjie speculated that Zhang Laosi should have been threatened and had to publicly overturn the case in order to save his life. Thinking of this, he summoned Li Yuanfang. Yuanfang, take Di Chun with you, hold my Shangfang sword, and immediately go to Sanhe County to summon the county magistrate Zhao Chuanchen. Renjie ordered. Zhang Laosi's blatant rebellion put him in a very passive position, and now he can only resort to the strategy of a suspicious soldier to deceive the governor of Youzhou, Fang Qian. Li Yuanfang bowed and said, yes. Remember, Renjie reminded, be sure to keep it confidential. Li Yuanfang understood and replied, please rest assured, sir. Subsequently, he and Di Chun rushed to Sanhe County with the Shangfang sword. From here, it can be seen that Renjie has gradually trusted Li Yuanfang and instead has doubts about Hu Jinghui. Otherwise, how could such an important task be entrusted to Li Yuanfang, the person who bears the blame, instead of to Hu Jinghui, who is the commander of the Qian Guard? As for Shenyoji, even Renjie couldn't determine his pulse, so he simply put him aside. That night, Zhao Chuanchen, the magistrate of Sanhe County, was taken to the imperial envoy's residence. Renjie immediately interrogated Zhao Chuanchen overnight. I am serving as the magistrate of Sanhe County, Zhao Chuanchen. I kowtow to the imperial envoy. Zhao Chuanchen knelt down on both knees and kowtowed to Renjie. Renjie gave him a cold glance and shouted, Zhao Chuanchen, do you know the crime? I don't understand what the adults mean. Zhao Chuanchen glanced up at Renjie and quickly lowered his head. I don't understand. All right. Then I'll give you a reminder. A year ago, the state distributed a consolation fund to each county. Renjie spoke out in detail about his embezzlement of comfort funds. Zhao Chuanchen became more and more frightened as he listened, and his official hat was soaked in sweat from his forehead. Your Highness, this money is a petty person who is greedy for money. Zhao Chuanchen trembled and said, I am despicable and embezzle huge amounts of money. I know my crime is serious, please handle it, Your Highness. Renjie knew that he was taking the blame for the people behind the scenes and immediately questioned, are you sure that you were the one who did this? Zhao Chuanchen gritted his teeth and nodded, firmly saying, exactly. Upon hearing this, Renjie chuckled and sarcastically said, don't say you're just a small county magistrate, even state officials and governors don't have this ability. I advise you to be honest. Zhao Chuanchen's hands trembled slightly, and he swallowed his saliva lightly, but still stubbornly said, this matter was indeed done by a despicable person. I hope you will understand. Renjie saw that he was still dishonest and began to adopt a policy of appeasement, saying, there is one thing you need to think clearly. You cannot bear this crime. No matter what kind of promises you make behind the scenes, they are all false. If they throw you out as a scapegoat now, will they still care about the life and death of your family? Upon hearing these words, Zhao Chuanchen immediately lifted his head and his eyes lit up with fear. Renjie saw the situation and expressed his interests to him. Your fate is only one, and that is to be killed and silenced by your master. Zhao Chuanchen trembled like a sieve of bran, but still gritted his teeth and remained silent. Don't believe it. We can play a game. Renjie immediately summoned everyone and arranged for Zhao Chuanchen to stay in the East Garden. Since he wants to fish, he naturally has to look at Zhao Chuanchen as the bait. That night, the governor of Youzhou, fake Fang Qian, and Sima Wu Yizhi received news of Renjie's night trial of Zhao Chuanchen. You said, Zhao Chuanchen won't betray us, right? Fake Fang Qian looked at Wu Yizhi and asked anxiously. After pondering for a moment, Wu Yizhi replied, everyone is sitting on the same boat. We're done, and he can't run either. I think he shouldn't be confused about it, right? Although that was the case, Fake Fang Qian was still anxious and decided to go to Renjie's place early tomorrow morning to explore the truth and falsehood. The next morning, Fang Qian and Wu Yizhi came to Wu Garden to investigate under the pretext of paying respects to the imperial envoys. Under the leadership of Hu Jinghui, the two of them walked straight into the main hall and actually saw Renjie secretly meeting Zhao Chuanchen. Moreover, Hu Jinghui was scolded severely by Renjie for recklessly leading them into the main hall without prior notice. This further exacerbated the anxiety in the hearts of Fake Fang Qian and Wu Yizhi. Quiet night, Sanhe County Government Zhao Chuanchen picked up the tea brought by his servant and was about to drink it when he heard a whoosh and something flew over, knocking the teacup in his hand to the ground. Zhao Chuanchen was scared out of his wits and immediately looked up, only to see a black figure jump off the beam of the house. That dark shadow is none other than Li Yuanfang. Zhao Chuanchen was uncertain and stuttered, General Li. Li Yuanfang pointed to the ground and explained, look at that cup of tea. Zhao Chuanchen slowly lowered his head and saw the tea spilled on the ground making a sizzling sound, emitting a white smoke. Following closely, a sour and foul smell filled the room. Zhao Chuanchen was completely stunned and trembled as he said, yes, it's poison. Until now, he finally believed Renjie's words and understood that his master would never care about his life or death, but rather wished to silence him. Li Yuanfang, along with Zhao Chuanchen, rushed back from Sanhe County to Qincha Xinyuan at night. As soon as Zhao Chuanchen saw Renjie, he kowtowed and repeatedly said, thank you very much for saving your life. Thank you very much for saving your life. Upon seeing the situation, Renjie quickly helped him up and once again asked about the consolation money. This time, Zhao Chuanchen did not conceal anything and explained everything he knew in detail. A year ago, the court transferred the consolation money from the state to the hands of the lower officials. I was supposed to distribute all the money, but unexpectedly, at this moment, Mr. Fang sent someone to call me to Youzhou and told me that this money cannot be distributed. I was very surprised at the time and quickly asked him the reason. He said it was an order from the court and ordered me to deposit this money in my own name until the heavens. At this point, Zhao Chuanchen suddenly paused and stared blankly at Renjie. Renjie was concerned about the clues and quickly asked, where did it go? However, Zhao Chuanchen still half closed his lips and remained silent. Renjie suddenly realized something was wrong and rushed forward to check, only to find that Zhao Chuanchen had already passed away. There's an assassin. Li Yuanfang and Hu Jinghui chased out at the same time. Renjie looked at Zhao Chuanchen's body and sighed heavily. The death of Zhao Chuanchen was naturally the stroke of the pit viper tiger Jinghui. He shot Zhao Chuanchen with the shadowless needle in order to protect the fake Fang Qian and Wu Yizhi. However, what Hu Jinghui did not expect was that fake Fang Qian and Wu Yizhi felt that Renjie had already known their identities due to daytime events. In a state of panic, they secretly contacted General Xiong in the military camp without the command of Jean Mulan to be sealed, preparing to rise up early, kill Renjie, and seize the entire territory of Youzhou. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Fang Qian subdues execution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Fang Qian subdues execution. Inside the imperial envoy's camp, Renjie looked at the list obtained from yesterday's interrogation of guerrilla General Zhang Yong, feeling particularly heavy. A few days ago, when he and Hu Jinghui had just returned to Youzhou, fake Fang Qian arranged for a group of military officers to disguise themselves as villagers and launch a strong attack on the city defense of Youzhou, creating a false image of a mob rebellion in order to make the fraud come true. Attempting to solidify the rebellion of the villagers in Daliashu village. However, how could this method possibly deceive Renjie? Last night, he ordered the arrest and interrogation of guerrilla generals Zhang Yong, Hu Jinbao, and Fang Hongliang, and finally obtained the list of those who impersonated villagers to participate in the rebellion on the desk. I didn't expect Fang Qian's power to be so great that even the army was under their control. Renjie knew in his heart that the current situation was extremely severe. Li Yuanfang, who was standing beside her, was taken aback and asked in confusion, "Sir, what do you mean by that?" Renjie explained, "The meaning is, if they start first, we will be very passive." As he was speaking, he suddenly felt startled and said, "Not good. Fang Qian is going to rebel." At this critical moment, Xing is still leisurely and carefree. He played health-preserving swordsmanship alone in the courtyard, feeling quite contented. "Brother Shen. The big deal is not going well." Li Yuanfang suddenly rushed in and shouted. Xing calmly withdrew his sword and asked softly, "Brother Yuanfang, why are you so panicked?" "Reverse. Youzhou Governor Fang Qian, reverse," Li Yuanfang said urgently. Although he knew that the governor of Youzhou was not a good person, Li Yuanfang never expected him to be so bold and reckless, daring to collude with the military and horse department and openly rebel. Upon hearing Fang Qian's rebellion, Xing frowned and asked, "Why did the governor of Youzhou suddenly rebel?" Li Yuanfang knew that Xing had not been exposed to the case recently, so she was unaware of the Central Plains Commission. But at the moment, he didn't have time to explain and only said, "This matter is a long story. Lord D asked me to come and find you. He wants us to go to the military and horse department campus with General Hu and immediately suppress the rebellion." "That's it, let's go." Xing did not hesitate and immediately took the shortcut. Subsequently, the two of them, together with Hu Jinghui, who held the Shangfang sword, led the Imperial Guard and rode to the military and horse department campus. Halfway through the journey, Hu Jinghui suddenly said, "This won't work. If it's too late, it won't be enough. I'll rush over first with the Shangfang sword, and you two will come later." After speaking, he suddenly squeezed his horse's belly and quickly passed the two of them, disappearing into the flying dust. Xing and Li Yuanfang, who were galloping on horseback, exchanged a glance and accelerated their speed. When Xing and the Imperial Guard arrived at the campus, Hu Jinghui held the Shangfang sword in one hand and the head of the Youzhou Sima Wu Yizhi in the other, angrily shouting to the army, "Whoever dares to step forward will die first." Li Yuanfang immediately exclaimed upon seeing the situation, "Fang Qian and Wu Yizhi will rebel and be executed. Those who lay down their weapons will be spared from death." Upon hearing these words, the soldiers suddenly became somewhat hesitant. Seeing his soldiers hesitant to step forward, General Xiong, the leader of the rebel army, immediately shouted angrily, "Brothers! Don't be deceived by them. At this point, surrender is also a dead end. Don't be afraid, everyone. Follow me to kill and leave. Kill me." After speaking, he was the first to charge towards the Imperial Guard. Upon seeing this, Xing threw the scabbard in his hand and swiftly shot out the sword, instantly piercing General Xiong's throat. Pa! General Xiong's body fell off the horse. "Listen, everyone. Those who lay down their weapons will be spared from death. Those who resist stubbornly in the corner will be killed without mercy." Li Yuanfang shouted in a timely manner. Seeing the leader dead, the soldiers below threw away their armor and stopped resisting. In this way, a rebellion was eliminated invisibly. Wu Yuan, after handling the affairs of the military and horse department, Xing and Li Yuanfang returned to the imperial envoy's office and reported to Renjie. "Sir, the military and horse department and the surrounding city gates have all been controlled by the Imperial Guard," said Li Yuanfang. "The Youzhou Sima Wu Yizhi rebelled and was executed. At this moment, General Hu is leading his troops to the governor's office to arrest Fang Qian." Renjie nodded at the words and said, "Okay. Yuanfang and Youzhou, you've worked hard. Just as the three of them were chatting, Lu Xiaofeng, who had been responsible for taking care of Li'er, suddenly came to report that Li'er's injury had worsened and he was afraid he would not be able to do it anymore. Upon hearing this, Renjie's face immediately changed and he hurriedly went to check. In the ward, Renjie looked at Li'er, who was on the brink of death in bed, and sighed helplessly. Whether or not he can survive tonight depends on himself. At this moment, Hu Jinghui rushed in and said urgently, "Sir, the last general led the imperial guard to the governor's mansion and was ordered to capture the governor of Youzhou, Fang Qian. However, when the last general arrived, he had already committed suicide and died by taking poison." "Are you dead again?" Renjie felt a chill in his heart. Firstly, Zhao Chuanchen died mysteriously during his confession. Now the governor of Youzhou, Fang Qian, inexplicably took poison and committed suicide. This made Renjie feel very suspicious. It is not a coincidence that every key figure will mysteriously pass away at the most crucial moment. It seems that the people behind the scenes are hiding by their side. Renjie made a judgment in his heart. If it weren't for having insiders around, the mastermind behind the scenes would never have acted so promptly. Thinking of this, Renjie's gaze swept over everyone inside the room one by one. Xianye, Li Yuanfang, Hu Jinghui, and Lu Xiaofeng are all suspected. Although the scope has been delineated, Renjie is not sure who it is now. Immediately, he planned a strategy in his mind to lure the tiger out of the mountain and then lure the snake out of the hole. The governor of Youzhou and Sima Jun both died, and Renjie summoned officials from all levels of Youzhou together. Above the court, Renjie sat upright and precariously upright. Xianye, Li Yuanfang, Hu Jinghui, and Lu Xiaofeng separated on both sides. Renjie looked at the officials at all levels in the hall and said, "Everyone, the two thieves Fang Qian and Wu Yizhi are deceiving and rebellious, squeezing the people, embezzling huge amounts of money, and enriching their own pockets. The people around Youzhou are living in poverty and frequent turmoil. This pavilion reports to the emperor's decree and conducts strict inspections." After the incident, the two thieves did not want to repent and went insane in their attempt to rebel. They have now been executed. Starting from today, all military and political affairs in Youzhou will be handled by this cabinet. Everyone at the next stop suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Renjie's gaze swept over everyone's faces, seeing both joy and sorrow on their faces. "Those who rebel against the two thieves shall immediately go to this pavilion to explain the situation and be punished according to the severity of the situation. If you refuse to explain and are caught by this cabinet, regardless of severity, you will be punished severely." Upon hearing this, officials at all levels in Youzhou bowed together and said, "I will obey your orders." Afterwards, Renjie announced the abolition of all the harsh taxes and levies imposed by Fang Qian during his reign, and reviewed the criminal, prison, and judicial systems to restore justice to the people. After explaining these things, Renjie said again, "Where is the Fa Chao of Youzhou?" Youzhou Fa Chao quickly stepped out of the line, bowing down and waiting for orders. "My humble duty. Xialianzi village in Lingjing County has a large population and some are missing. The villagers are suspected to be haunted by a fierce ghost. Please take someone to investigate immediately and report back immediately. No delay is allowed." Fa Chao quickly replied, "Yes. Youzhi and Dio, you two will go to Xialianzi village together to cooperate with the investigation of the disappearance of villagers by Youzhou Fatsao." Renjie then turned his head to look at Xianye and Lu Xiaofeng. Although this statement sounded grand and precise, Xianye knew it was just an excuse. Previously, he was left in Daliashu village with Li Yuanfang. However, shortly after returning to Youzhou, he has been neglected and now he has been transferred to Xialianzi village. Even discerning people can see that Renjie has always distrusted him, so he has been transferred multiple times to prevent him from being exposed to the core of the case. However, Xianye was not in a hurry. He was not with the snake spirit, and the Youzhou case had no impact on his plan. Naturally, he would not refuse Renjie's orders. On the contrary, Xing was eager for Renjie to quickly resolve this case, so that he could immediately proceed with the Yangzhou case and help him eliminate the sword hanging over his head, in Wang Yuanqi. He has always been wholeheartedly helping Renjie, and has never had any other thoughts. As for Renjie's suspicion of him, it is even less worth mentioning. Time will prove everything. At least until he takes the final step, his interests are highly aligned with those of Renjie. That is to say, before that, Renjie would never have caught any flaws in him. Because he had no flaws and genuinely wanted to help Renjie solve the case. Now Renjie becomes more suspicious of him, and once the truth is revealed, he will feel even more guilty towards him and naturally trust him even more. Don't worry, Duke D. I will do my best. Xing arched his hand and said. Subsequently, he left the governor's office with Lu Xiaofeng and Youzhou Fatsao and rushed to Xialianzi village. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Breaking through Ghost Town alone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Breaking through Ghost Town alone. Although fake Fang Qian has been executed, Xing knows that there will be many major events happening during the days when he leaves. Firstly, while investigating the whereabouts of the stolen silver, Renjie discovered Fang Qian, who was imprisoned underground. Later, he discovered Fang Qian's cunning plan and exposed his true identity as a staff member of the King of Yu. Finally, Renjie led the snake out of the hole and captured the pit viper attempting to assassinate Li Er on the spot. Unfortunately, these things have nothing to do with Xing. But that's good, he can take advantage of this time to do another big thing. The sunlight shines on Xialianzi mountain, and the lush mountains stand tall and towering. There is a secluded small hill below the river, surrounded by round logs. Under the mountain wall, there are 4 or 5 caves, all of which are blocked by giant rocks at the entrance, and water continuously flows out of the caves. Several villagers led the landing of Dio and Xing to come here. As soon as Xing approached the cave, he smelled a strong stench, like the smell of corpses rotting. When was this discovered? Xing asked the villagers. A villager replied, to answer your question, a few days ago when the government opened the mountain, I and a few fellow villagers went up the mountain to hunt and discovered this place. Upon hearing this, Lu Xiaofeng frowned and said, before the government closed the mountain, I used to walk this road a lot. There weren't any of these caves. Upon seeing this, Xing said to the villagers, first, move away and take a look at the stone that sealed the cave. With a loud bang, the giant rock at the entrance of the cave was moved by more than 10 villagers. With a loud roar, a jet of turbid water rushed out, rushing like a flash flood. Look, the body, exclaimed a villager in surprise. Sure enough, several corpses were carried in the water and leaked out of the cave, and as the water intensified, more and more corpses drifted out. The crowd quickly picked up these corpses and placed them on the empty ground to the side. Not long after, the villagers in Xialianzi village recognized that the deceased inside were all their neighbors. The nearby villagers knelt in front of the bodies of their loved ones, crying uncontrollably, and the sound shook the whole field. Lu Xiaofeng looked at the floating corpses everywhere and sighed, these dead people are all the missing villagers from the nearby village in the past 2 years. What a pity. This matter is not insignificant, it's quite remarkable. You should immediately return to Youzhou and report everything here to Duke D, Xing said. Lu nodded slightly and asked again, Xia Shen, what about you? The deaths of these people are definitely related to the ghost town you mentioned, I want to go there and investigate. Xing's eyes shot with a terrifying killing intent. After witnessing the atrocities committed by Jean Mulan and others with his own eyes, his killing intent could no longer be contained. Night, Ghost Town. The small town stands on the mound, surrounded by flickering phosphorescence. All the houses in the town have no doors, and of course, there are no people, let alone any noise, making this rumored home of ghosts even more desolate and terrifying. A cold wind rose from the flat ground, and a lightning bolt flashed across the distant mountain peak. A figure appeared on the street of Ghost Town. Xing wielded his sword and walked at night in this so-called Ghost Town. He knew in his heart that this Ghost Town was the old nest of Jean Mulan. Those people secretly arrested a large number of villagers and forged weapons here to prepare for rebellion. Due to the fear of being discovered during the day, work was only carried out at night, which led to it being rumored as a ghost town by surrounding villagers. At present, Xing has no soldiers or helpers, only one person and one sword. He had to rely on the sword in his hand to break through the ghost town carefully arranged by Jean Mulan. Unlike the original work, Xing's actions were much faster than Renjie in the original work. In the original work, Renjie first exposed the true face of the pit viper, then learned that Li'er was the Jili Khan, and then went on to investigate the mysterious cave of Xialianzi Mountain with Li Yuanfang. After a series of events, Renjie finally decided to explore Ghost Town at night. From the failed assassination of Li'er by the pit viper to the night exploration of Ghost Town by Renjie, there was a long gap between them, so much so that Jean Mulan was already prepared and had set up the suspicion of Li Daitao's stiffness in advance, let her maid wear Jean Mulan's clothes and commit suicide by taking poison, creating a false image of the bandit leader Jean Mulan fearing suicide. And she herself continued to be Princess Li Qingxia of Yang, pretending to be a victim of being detained here by criminals. In this way, she not only temporarily cleared herself of suspicion, but also successfully lurked around Renjie. But now, with the addition of Xing, the capture of pit vipers and the exploration of ghost towns are almost advancing simultaneously. At this moment, the identity of the pit viper has not been fully exposed, and Jean Mulan has not reached the point of extreme poverty. Naturally, she will not be so crazy as to risk everything, let alone implement Li Daitao's plan. That is to say, as long as Xing has broken the ghost town now, Li Qingxia's identity can no longer be hidden, and the Youzhou case can also be completely solved. And this is exactly what he had planned to do before coming to Xialianzi village. Since Renjie still doesn't trust him, he must rely on his own efforts to completely end the Youzhou case. At that time, Renjie will definitely feel guilty for his previous exclusion and vigilance, followed by absolute trust. Rumble, another bolt of lightning followed by a thunderous roar of thunder. Seeing that it was about to rain, Xing immediately turned around and entered a pitch-black room. Outside, the rain has already started pouring down. A lightning bolt lit up, and Xing suddenly noticed that there was a bowl of steaming hot water on the 8 Immortals table inside the room. Xing shook his long sword in his hand and let out light moans. Another lightning bolt illuminated the room. Xing took advantage of the faint light of lightning and found a person nailed to the wall, grinning and covered in blood. After a thunderous roar, a lightning bolt lit up and a figure cast its shadow onto the wall. Xing made a decisive decision and kicked over the 8 Immortals table in the room, then dodged and hid behind the table. Speaking late, then fast, the sound of breaking through the sky is continuous, and cold stars strike from the dark night several times. Ding 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 ding. Countless hidden weapons hit the 8 Immortals table, making a piercing sound. When he was young, the hidden weapon had been fired, and Xing exerted another force on his right leg, kicking out the entire 8 Immortals table. Pai li pa. The 8 Immortals table shattered the door, and Xing took the opportunity to rush outside. At this moment, dozens of black-clad assassins rushed out of a room and surrounded Xing. Xing knew that these people were under the command of Jean Mulan, so he immediately stopped talking and used his sword as a killing move. For a moment, sword shadows flew and screamed in the ghost town on a thunderstorm night. Although these black-clothed people are numerous and powerful, their martial arts skills are not particularly high. They are mostly miscellaneous soldiers lent by the snake spirit to Jean Mulan. Clearing these miscellaneous soldiers is as simple as clearing weeds for Xing. In no time, Xing's long sword cut through the throat of the last black-clothed man. After cleaning up these miscellaneous soldiers, Yuanfang immediately went to the room where the black-clothed men were crowding out, preparing to attack Jean Mulan's base from there. As soon as he entered the room, Yuanfang saw the open secret door. I think those black-clothed people relied on the large number of people and believed that Yuanfang would definitely die, so they did not immediately close the channel, but wanted to return to the base directly after killing Yuanfang. But now it's cheaper for Yuanfang, saving him the time to explore the mechanism. Yuanfang rushed into the secret passage without delay, ready to penetrate Jean Mulan's heart and capture him. As soon as he entered, Yuanfang couldn't help but feel that the cave was wide enough to accommodate a carriage. I don't know how much manpower was expended on such a massive project, and those innocent villagers who were captured are afraid to be exhausted to death. At this moment, Yuanfang was even less prepared to leave Jean Mulan's life behind. A scumbag who colludes with other ethnic groups to overthrow the Han family's country would not hesitate to die. People like Jean Mulan, no matter what era they are in, are all despised traitors, and dying 10,000 times is not worth pitying. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Capturing Jean Mulan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Capturing Jean Mulan. After wandering in the mountain cave for a long time, Yuanfang finally touched the old nest of Jean Mulan. Qingxiang Xiaozhu. No one could have imagined that there was such an ancient and fragrant small building beneath this cave. It can be seen that even if Jean Mulan becomes a bandit leader, she cannot change the indulgent behavior of the royal children. With such a mentality, I have the delusion of being enemies with Renjie and even wanting to learn from Wu Xiaofeng to become the second female emperor. I am truly ambitious and incompetent. Just as Yuanfang was showing great disdain for Jean Mulan, a ghostly figure suddenly appeared behind him. What impressive likeness skills! Yuanfang couldn't help but marvel in his heart. This person should be a subordinate of Jean Mulan, Yuanfang. Yuanfang knew that Yuanfang's martial arts were good, especially his likeness skills and body techniques. It was also him who pushed Li Yuanfang step by step towards Renjie's side. Being able to constantly monitor Li Yuanfang without being detected shows the ingenuity of this person's likeness skills. However, good likeness skills do not necessarily mean good martial arts skills. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died at the hands of Li Yuanfang either. Yuanfang's martial arts are not inferior to Li Yuanfang, how could he be afraid of a small Yuanfang? You finally came. Yuanfang looked at Yuanfang and said coldly. Yuanfang saw that he didn't ask for his name, as if he already knew his identity, so he knew that Hu Jinghui had already informed Jean Mulan of the news that he had been sent by Renjie to Xialianzi village. Jean Mulan probably couldn't have imagined that she could find this place so quickly. Who are you? Yuanfang asked knowingly. Yuanfang. Yuanfang replied coldly. Are you the mastermind behind all these cases? Yuanfang deliberately probed again. Of course not him. A crisp voice suddenly came from behind Yuanfang. Upon hearing the sound, Yuanfang turned around and saw a gorgeous woman in armor slowly walking out of the fragrant small building. It was the bandit leader hiding here. Jean Mulan, who was also the princess of Yang, Li Qingxiao. She dares to appear in front of herself, it seems she has taken care of herself. That's right, this is her lair, it's the foundation she has been running for many years. If she can't even win anyone here, then why talk about occupying Youzhou or ascending to the throne? Who are you? Yuanfang looked at Jean Mulan and pretended not to know. Just now you were still asking, who is the mastermind behind all of this? Jean Mulan said proudly. Upon hearing this, Yuanfang suddenly said, so it's you. Not bad. Jean Mulan replied with some pride, it's me. Ha! Yuanfang sneered and said, how dare you appear here? Aren't you afraid of my sharp sword? Afraid? Ha ha ha. Jean Mulan seemed to have heard some joke and laughed wildly. This is the base that I have been operating for many years, and all our people and horses are hiding here. Jean Mulan looked down at Xing and said, "If you break in alone, you are stepping into the gates of hell. Do you think it's necessary for me to be afraid of a dead person?" Jean Mulan asked in response. "Ha," Xing chuckled lightly and said coldly, seeing that she was well prepared, "Then give it a try." As soon as the words fell, Xing's long sword lightly chanted, sending out a signal of chasing souls and killing lives. With a light step, he suddenly rushed towards Jean Mulan, and the long sword took his throat. In the midst of this electric light and fire, an iron sword suddenly shot out, cutting off the killing sword that Xing had stabbed. The owner of this iron sword is naturally Yuanfang. This person's lightness skills are truly extraordinary, as they were able to strike first and stop Xing's deadly sword. At this point, the confrontation between Xing and Yuanfang was naturally imminent. The two of them engaged in a fierce battle with their swords, and immediately began to kill the general. Xing's long sword is light and agile, with a relaxed and freehand style in the ups and downs of his moves, as if literati were picking up their pens and painting, with a strong charm. Although Yuanfang's moves were not as good as Xing's, his body movements were as fast as ghosts and monsters. He repeatedly avoided Xing's deadly sword and relied on his body movements to constantly entangle himself and engage in combat. Xing saw him sliding like a loach, and immediately turned his gaze to look at Jean Mulan beside him. Since Yuanfang likes to fight, then he must attack and save him. In an instant, Xing's eyes were cold, and his long sword swung open the sharp blade of the wind. He then charged towards Jean Mulan again, pretending to cut him off by the sword. Yuanfang was loyal to Jean Mulan and saw Xing directly attacking the yellow dragon, intending to take Jean Mulan's life. He didn't care if his martial arts were not as good as his opponent's, so he could only forcefully block Jean Mulan and face Xing's attack. And this is precisely the purpose of Xing. With the help of Jean Mulan as the target, Xing successfully restrained Yuanfang's actions. Without that flexible body technique, how can Yuanfang compete with Xing solely based on his moves? The two of them dismantled just over 20 moves, and Xing's long sword, like a spirit snake, opened a hole in the throat of the wind. Zila, a blood arrow shot out from Yuanfang's wound. This loyal assassin finally collapsed in front of his loyal master. Ah! Upon seeing Yuanfang's tragic death, Jean Mulan suddenly let out a scream of surprise. Upon Yuanfang's death, only Jean Mulan and Xing remained in the small building. Seeing Xing's cold gaze, Jean Mulan couldn't help but tremble in her heart. She immediately shouted angrily around, "What are you waiting for? Kill him now!" As soon as she uttered these words, countless black-clothed people rushed out from the shadows, surrounding Xing. Xing estimated slightly that there were hundreds of people in black. If it weren't for this small building being able to accommodate so many people, I'm afraid there would be more people surrounding. Sure enough, this old nest of golden Mulan is not so easy to break through. With these countless fugitives, it's really difficult for ordinary people to get out alive. But is Xing just an ordinary person? He held his sword and looked at Jean Mulan on the high platform, laughing and saying, "With these people alone, you want to kill me?" Humph. Jean Mulan snorted coldly and sarcastically said, "How dare you shout even when you're on the brink of death? I want to see how you can get out of this encirclement. Kill out." Xing never thought of killing anyone. Even though he has excellent martial arts skills, he is still a mortal body, and his physical strength is ultimately limited. Even if these hundreds of people stood there and asked him to chop, it would take a lot of effort to finish. Therefore, Xing's goal has never been to fight with blood, but to capture the thief and the king first. After determining the target, Xing did not fight the people in black around her at all. Even when he used his lightness skills, a few ups and downs in the air landed steadily behind Jean Mulan, and his long sword pressed firmly on her shoulder. "Now, do you want to try again?" Xing looked at the slightly trembling Jean Mulan and sneered. You Jean Mulan felt the chill coming from her neck and said, "You," 3 times in a row, but dared not say anything else. She was really afraid of provoking this young man and getting stabbed by his sword, which made her feel extremely cold. Her plan has not yet been realized, she has not yet ascended to the supreme throne, how can she die at the hands of such ordinary people? End of this chapter.